about who we are, a little introduction. So we all work for Family Service Agency, which is a nonprofit here in Santa Barbara County. And we contract with the schools to provide therapy at secondary schools in Santa Barbara Unified District. So middle schools and high schools, there's at least one of us there. More specifically, I'm Jessica Zacharias, and I'm an associate marriage and family therapist, and I'm at Santa Barbara High full-time.
And I'm Raquel Del Carmel, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm at Goleta Valley Junior High. Thank you for taking the time to be here. It's a big, beautiful step toward self-care.
Hey everybody, my name is Devin Haley Nelson. I am a candidate for my master's in social work, and I'm working at La Cumbre Junior High School.
And I'm Kara Peterson. I'm a marriage and family therapist trainee, and I'm full-time at San Marcos High School. And thanks for spending some time with us this evening. Why are we here today? So our series this evening is Parenting in a Pandemic, and we wanted to start with some self-care tips for parents and talking about parents' mental health as well as the first step towards taking care of yourself. I have a quote here I'd like to share with you from the Child Mind Institute that kind of touches on self-care and taking care of yourself so that you can care for your families and your loved ones during these times. When you're running on fumes, caring for others can tax your already depleted resources to the breaking point. But when you prioritize your needs, you're filling your tank emotionally and physically, and that means you're in a better position to offer comfort and care to those around you when they need it most. Some of the purposes of this webinar and things and goals for tonight are to normalize and validate your experiences as parents going through a pandemic. We hope to instill hope and a sense of self-compassion. And we'd like to empower you to take small steps, and we'll have some suggestions for what some of those steps could look like as you work on self-compassion and self-care. And towards the end of the webinar, we will be providing additional resources and connections within our community if you would like additional care and support.
All right, so we're just gonna jump right into it. Everyone could we're just gonna dive in. So if everyone could just take a deep breath. Maybe unclench your jaw if it's clenched. And what we're gonna do is practice a little self-check-in. These are great because you can kind of do this to yourself in the morning, in the car, just a nice little tool to use that we're just gonna jump into. So we'll first do the mind, the heart, and the body, and we'll give a little bit of time after I explain it a little bit. So again, take another deep breath and really look inward and think about your thoughts. What are the thoughts that are racing through your mind right now? And there's maybe images popping up, or maybe planning for the future, or thinking about dinner, or concern about your kid. Just kind of notice what those thoughts are non-judgmentally. Next, we'll focus on the heart. And so what that represents is our emotional state. So what are you feeling today? And likely more than one thing. Are you feeling it intensely or a little bit? And again, just remember to keep breathing throughout this. And then we're transitioning into the body. So what are the sensations that you're feeling in your body? Oftentimes emotions have sensations on our body. So can you locate where on your body you're feeling your emotions? You feel maybe a tightness in your upper back or neck, or is your breath moving quickly or slowly? Are you feeling maybe tired, or maybe you feel calm or at ease right now? Whatever it is, just simply notice it and keep breathing. All right, guys, that was just about a minute, and we'll move on a little bit.
All right, well, thank you, Jessica, for allowing us to check in, help me with my own anxiety, being able to check in with my thoughts, my body, and my emotions. So now we're just going to focus a little bit more on the distinction and talking about these two important parts here, which is mental health, as you can see on this picture here, mental health on one side of that scale and physical health on the other side. And you can see they weigh the same. So basically, it's just to say they go hand in hand. You know, they are equally important, intertwined. They're different, but we can't make, you know, you have to, if there's an imbalance, we need to make sure that they're both, you know, we're doing our best to bring them both to the same level. So say, for instance, you know, if a person has poor physical health, it might increase the risk of them developing some mental health issues, and vice versa. So say, for instance, a person is undergoing a lot of stress, and it might interfere with their physical health. They might end up having a lot of headaches or you know, heartburn. They might experience physical problems that are stemming from their mental health issues. So again, when the person has a physical problem, you know, if it lasts for a little longer than they would like, they will go and check in, check it out at the doctor. So similarly, it's also important to look at our mental health and seeing if it's getting in the way of us functioning the way that we want to, and make sure that we all really have this for ourselves, that they're both, you know, very, very important. We're not just a body with a mind, we're a body and a mind. So again, it's just making sure that we're really paying attention to this important factor here, like making sure that they're both on the same page. We're taking, you know, care of ourselves in both ways. And now that we've got a chance to check in a little bit more about, you know, how, you know, our mental health is just as important as our physical health, I wanted to touch upon this slide. And it just talks a little bit more about why the coronavirus, which is a physical illness, you know, it's a virus, why it's triggering some mental health issues in people. So again, as you can see, there's a bunch of different things here, some reasons. You know, it's bringing up a lot of feelings of hopelessness. You know, maybe it's interfering with people's job security or their financial security. You know, there's a fear for your loved one's health. You know, there's increased health anxiety about yourself. And, you know, again, with trying to, you know, we're in a place where this pandemic has been going on for so long, and we are basically just trying to survive it. So a lot of the things that we like to do in our daily lives, we haven't been able to do it as much. So it's switching from that living to surviving these times. And with the social distancing, it's, you know, we're experiencing some social withdrawal, and which is leading to some loneliness. So again, with the quarantine and us not being able to do as many things as we would like, it's making it also really difficult for us to distract ourselves from perhaps some of the mental ill issues that we are dealing with. So basically, I wanted to, you know, still stay with this slide. I wanted to add a few more things. Some other common consequences of the pandemic that you may be experiencing, or you may see friends or family members experiencing. Some of them are like fear of the unknown, in the sense of overwhelm. So basically, none of us knows what's going to happen. You know, there's that sense that you're feeling overwhelmed. This is lasting so long. So there's all those feelings come with it as well. There's an increase in family conflicts. We're all kind of home, you know, there's disruption of the routines. You're home more often with your family. You know, there's that general sense of lack of control. So again, bringing our attention to self-care, it allows us to take control over something, some steps that we can take toward bringing a little bit of that sense of control back. with this pandemic, some of the consequences are also the feelings of inadequacy. There's parents who are concerned about their children's mental health. They're not hanging out with friends as much anymore. They're not at school. So, and parents at the same time trying to juggle their jobs and their responsibilities. There's a preoccupation with your family's health and well-being. And again, grief. I think it's very important to touch upon the grief surrounding the expectations and missed events such as graduations, weddings, parties, trips, and things like that. And again, heightened sense of anxiety and an increase in the symptoms of depression. So again, this physical illness, which is the coronavirus, is leading to, it's also affecting a person not only physically, but also mentally. So we'll be talking a little bit more about as we go, but just a little overview of where we're at. I think it's important to, for us to check in and see, wow, these things are happening for me or my family, and this is affecting me mentally as well and emotionally.
All right, so there's a lot of elements to mental health, right? But tonight we're going to specifically talk about anxiety and depression. So what are anxiety and depression? We hear these terms a lot, right? Maybe you hear someone saying that they're anxious for a meeting with their supervisor at work, or maybe you hear your child say that they're feeling depressed. Or we hear about diagnoses of clinical depression and anxiety. Topics like these surrounding mental health are often tiptoed around in our society, partially because we might not really know what these terms mean, and also because of stigmas, right? Oh, anxiety, depression, mental health, that stuff, those people over there deal with it, but I don't. My family, we don't deal with mental health. But we are here to normalize and validate everybody's experiences with depression, anxiety, and mental health at large. We also want to normalize the conversation about mental health. So what is anxiety? Anxiety is a reaction of your brain and body and emotions to situations which seem dangerous, unfamiliar, or unknown. It can be related to fear, stress, and feelings such as that. Some common sensations related to anxiety, maybe your heart starts beating fast, or your hands get a little clammy, your instincts might kick into fight, flight, or freeze. So to look at this first bullet point, everybody experiences some anxiety. However, anxiety becomes a problem when it gets in the way of doing everyday experiences. Did you hear that? I said it. I said that we all experience anxiety. Sometimes anxiety can actually be helpful to us. Like, for example, my colleagues and I tonight, preparing for this webinar, I think that I can speak for all of us in saying that we had a bit of anxiety about it because we care about all of you and we care about your students and our community. And that anxiety, I think, actually was helpful and motivated us to work hard and try our best for this webinar. So in this situation, the anxiety was helpful. However, sometimes our anxiety can prevent us from doing things or engaging with people in the way we used to or the way that we would like to. So there's also depression. Depression is more than just feeling sad. In fact, it can present in different ways depending on the person. And depression can negatively affect the way we feel, the way we think, and the way we act. And the American Psychiatric Association describes it as feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest in activities you once enjoyed, having low energy. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems, again, with the connection of mental health and physical health. They're really intertwined. So just like a lot of things, we can look at anxiety and depression as if they're on a spectrum, right? From mild, gotta prep for this webinar, to moderate, to more severe. So it's really important that we take time reflecting on how we're doing, how we're really doing, looking for symptoms of depression or anxiety in ourselves in order to show up in our lives the way that we would like to. All right, so now we would like to talk about some of the common symptoms of depression and anxiety. But first, before I go through the list of these different symptoms, I want to encourage you all to do a little bit of self-reflection here. Which of these symptoms stand out to you? Have you experienced these symptoms? How often and to what level of intensity? Have you noticed these symptoms in your student or in a loved one? Be reflecting on questions like this as I read through the list. Some symptoms of anxiety. Restlessness, might feel hard to stop moving, having difficulty concentrating, irritability, racing thoughts, catastrophic thinking, being future oriented, having obsessing or ruminating thoughts, thinking that the world is not safe. Some experiences of depression might be having low energy, feeling tired, sad, or tearful, maybe feeling unmotivated, or having some irritability, having a hard time concentrating, having changes in eating or sleeping patterns, having feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness, experiencing low self-esteem or being self-critical, thinking the world is not safe. So you may notice that there's a lot of overlap between these two lists, right? There's some words and some symptoms we see on both sides. And so that points to the statistic here that 60% of people who experience anxiety also experience symptoms of depression and vice versa. So like we had mentioned, all of us experience these symptoms to some extent, right? And however, we also all come across really stressful times in our life when these anxiety and depression symptoms may be impacting our daily functioning to a point where we really must take some action, okay? So let's think back to the comparison of physical and mental health. So let's say you woke up one day and your knee is just really bugging you, okay? But you think, no big deal, like I'll be fine, just gonna operate as normal. But one day passes, 2 days pass, 1 week passes. At what point do you take some action to try to care for your knee? At what point do you like slow down, take a chill pill, grab some ice, elevate your leg? Or taking it even further, at what point do you check in with the doctor and get some medical intervention? So thinking along those veins, we advocate for considering these symptoms of mental health in high regard as well, and take action to address them. So in the following slides, we're going to discuss some things we can do to care for ourselves and our mental health and reduce these symptoms related to mental health. And at the end of the presentation, we will share some resources of mental health professionals and other resources in the community to provide support as well.
So now we're going to talk a bit about self-care. As we mentioned, we'd like to share some small steps with all of you that you can take to mitigate some of these feelings that you may be experiencing. Maybe you recognized some of the signs of anxiety and depression from the list we just shared. And here's some things you can do on your own to mitigate some of those. Self-care is defined as the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health. It's the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress, which I think we can all agree we're feeling right now with this pandemic. I do want to highlight that self-care has two aspects to it. There's a preventative version of self-care, such as having routines, consistent practices that you do to help maintain a lower level of stress regularly. And then self-care can also be used as a restorative approach when you do realize that you are experiencing more stress, either internally or due to outside sources and stressors that are occurring. So a little more on self-care. What is self-care? What does that mean? Again, that can look very different for everyone. It's very much an individual practice, and a little bit more about what that could look like. It could be an activity, such as working out, a physical activity, a hobby that you really enjoy. It could include some kind of a practice. Maybe you have a meditation practice or a spiritual or religious or prayer practice, something that you can engage in on a regular basis to reduce stress. It also can serve as a way to maintain and enhance short-term and also long-term health and well-being. And self-care is necessary for us to be effective and successful in honoring both our professional and our personal commitments.
All right, thank you, Carol, for talking a little bit more about self-care. I think that's a wonderful explanation of what it really means. So when we think about self-care, we can divide it into these 5 main categories here. And this is something that we strive to be able to achieve, a level of self-care in all these areas. Some things get in the way, sometimes like the pandemic, but basically you can divide it into a social self-care, which means it's a question that you can ask yourself. Are you getting enough time with friends or with family members? Are you nurturing those relationships for yourself? And then you're talking about the physical self-care. Physical self-care, are you taking care of your body? Are you sleeping well? How well are you eating? Are you getting physical activity to the best of your ability? So those are important things to consider as well under physical health, self-care right there. And then you go to the mental health, which is one of the things that's very important that we're doing tonight. You're taking these steps towards self-care, taking care of your mental health, and being here, it's a really great step toward that. Again, questions you can ask yourself: are you making enough time to engage in activities that mentally stimulate you, that bring you joy? Are you trying to do things that make you feel productive, things that keep you mentally healthy? Again, next one would be spiritual self-care. Some people have a religion, some people have a spiritual practice. Even with this pandemic, all that we're dealing with right now, I think it's raising a lot of questions for people. It's making us think about, the future and our relationship to others and to the world. So again, it's making us consider all these questions, these bigger existential questions about life and our own experience and how we relate to one another. And again, some people do choose to engage in more concrete spiritual practices or religious practices that bring them some solace in times like these. And again, the last one, very connected to the mental health as well. One of the reasons why we're here tonight is that emotional self-care. Are you finding healthy ways to process your emotions? So one of the goals here tonight is that we can give you perhaps some ideas on how to be able to process your feelings a little bit better so that your relationships are not as affected, that we're finding healthy ways to express our feelings instead of keeping them bottled up. Finding ways to incorporate activities into your life that make you feel recharged, like tonight. So again, I hope that through this process, you can realize that this is part of this process of self-care. Just the fact that you chose to be here tonight and look at different things and some ideas of things that you can try, and some validation around the things that I'm sure you already are trying. So these are important. It's an important distinction there so that we have an ability there to kind of like check in with ourselves. Am I doing enough of this one, enough of this one? And we're all doing our best right now. So it's not so easy at the moment, but I think just having that awareness around the separation between them can be helpful.
Raquel. Yeah, so now we're going to talk about different types of coping skills and kind of give some examples of different ways to go about that. Like we mentioned before, it's very individualized. So what may work for you might be completely different than what may work for your teen or your friend, right? So it really is about practicing it and seeing and kind of like a scientist with an experiment, like what's going to work for you, what helps, helps in certain situations. So these are some examples and we'll kind of go into them. So there's distraction. And this one, I think that most of us are pretty good at, where we can pick up a phone and look at it when we're feeling elevated or escalated emotionally and kind of distract ourselves, or watch a show, or, you know, read a magazine, whatever it is, to just kind of get our mind off of it and focus on something else that can help our emotions regulate. Grounding techniques. So these are really about getting in touch with your five senses. So sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. So you can focus on one of them, you can focus on all of them, but really it's about noticing how you're feeling in the moment. So this can especially really help with anxiety when we're kind of thinking about the future a lot, or maybe depression, where sometimes we're thinking about the past a lot, perhaps. It just kind of brings us into the here and now and checking in with our body. And then there's emotional release. And this is, you know, what it sounds like. It's when you're feeling elevated with your emotions, it's your emotions are trying to, you know, be heard for a reason. So sometimes it's healthy to just let it out. Have a good cry. When was the last time you had a real good cry where you actually let yourself sob, right? Or be really angry, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's appropriate to really feel your emotions to the extent that you're feeling them. And then self-love. This one is kind of like the treat yourself. If you like that piece of chocolate at the end of the day, go for it. Or some people like retail therapy, or, you know, this can look a million different ways, but it is about just treating yourself and doing that something extra special that you wouldn't normally do for yourself. And then thought challenge. This is about realizing that your thoughts are really just thoughts, and that they're not always true, and they're certainly not always helpful to be thinking. So maybe you're having the thought of, I'm not a good parent, or I never know what to do, or maybe you're having a thought of they'll never change, or they'll never understand, referring to your kids, right? Sometimes just taking a step back and noticing that those thoughts could be catastrophizing a little bit. And just, I like to tell people, just kind of plug in, I'm noticing I'm having the thought that blank. So I'm noticing I'm having the thought that I'm a horrible parent. So that kind of separates us a little bit from that thought, which will likely make us feel less bad. Because if we keep thinking that, right? And then lastly, accessing your higher self. And this is kind of like that spiritual self-care that Raquel was talking about. So this might look like prayer, or might look like going out into the nature, or might look like volunteering and giving back into your community. Just really doing something that connects you to something bigger than yourself. Sometimes that can help us and our problems feel a little bit smaller. And I believe that Raquel is going to send you a link to it's called Coping Skills, Pros and Cons, and it has all these categories with a small definition and then the pros and cons. And this is an awesome PDF. I use this with my clients all the time, and I encourage you guys to check it out and actually use it with your middle schooler or high schooler, whoever's at home with you, and go through them together and just have a conversation. Again, destigmatizing that that you can talk about mental health, and showing your kid that it's okay and safe to talk to you about their mental health as well.
Yes, I just added it to the chat. If you guys want to check it out, it's a link that you can access it.
Perfect.
All right, thank you both for breaking that down. So we just wanted to share a few tips and tricks. So we just went over a lot of information, and I'm sure you guys have your own ways of self-care and your own coping skills to incorporate, but we would really challenge you to try something different, and have grace for yourself in the process. Remember that these coping skills, we learn them with practice, right? Just with anything. They will feel more natural and require less effort the more we practice them. So maybe your friend's favorite form of self-care, yoga or meditation, maybe that's not your jam and it doesn't work for you, and that's okay. But have grace for yourself, because we're all unique and we all have different needs, and there will be different strategies that will help you. Secondly, practice. We have to practice different forms of self-care, sample the buffet in order to find what works for us, right? It's important to practice them when we're not flooded with emotion, when we're not in crisis, so our brain and body know how to do them. And then we will be able to more naturally and effectively apply these skills when we're feeling overwhelmed. So for me, something I practice is deep breathing. And I practice this with my students at La Cumbre Junior High a lot, at the beginning, end of session, sometimes in the middle. When we're feeling okay, I'll be like, hey, let's just, how many deep breaths should we take right now? And we practice it in a time when we're not in crisis, when we're not super elevated, so that in times when we're not doing so hot, our body is more used to that self-care practice and it could be more effective. And lastly, something that's really important about these self-care practices is modeling, right? Bringing it back to parenting. Modeling for our children and our students that we can prioritize our own mental health is one of the best ways to teach them that they can do that for themselves as well. And also, when we take care of ourselves and focus on filling up our own cup, so to speak, we will have more to give and pour out to our kids. So with these practices of self-care, with talking about mental health and what we might be going through, normalizing these experiences, it's really important, you guys. These symptoms, these situations, students are experiencing it, us as adults are experiencing it. It's real. So these are just some tips and tricks that we wanted to leave you guys.
Thank you, Devin. Speaking of practice, we're going to do one. And so we are going to just do a really quick mindful minute. And I'm pulling up this YouTube video. You can just search on YouTube, mindful breathing 1 minute, mindful breathing 10 minutes, whatever it is. There are thousands of these videos on YouTube of all different kinds of those coping skills, of grounding techniques, of thought challenges, information on that. So just know that that's a good resource for, okay, where do I start with these coping skills? And so Headspace is also an app that I have on my phone, and Calm, C-A-L-M, is also another amazing app that provides these guided meditations that I highly recommend you check out. All right, so here we go. Hopefully this works.
Hi, and welcome to Headspace. So no matter what's going on in your life right now, no matter how many thoughts are racing around your mind, no matter how the body's feeling, just take a moment to sit down and take a big deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, a sense of taking in fresh air, the lungs expanding. As you breathe out, a sense of letting go of any stress in the body, in the mind, just feeling the muscles soften and relax. And close your eyes if you'd like to. One more. Breathing deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just take a moment to pause. Allow the thoughts to come and go. And then just gently opening the eyes again.
All right, so that was super quick, right? 1 minute. And looking at the time, I think we have time to just quickly go through that 3-center check-in. And I want to do this just so that we notice if there's a shift from when we first did it in the beginning. So again, where's your mind at? Where are your thoughts at? What are you thinking about? Just kind of notice them non-judgmentally. Secondly, your heart. Has your emotion shifted, changed at all? You feel more intensely, less intensely with any emotion, a different emotion perhaps? And then lastly, body. What are your sensations in your body? Is anything tightened up or loosened up a little bit? You feel any tension? Do the sensations stand still or do they shift and move? Is there a temperature associated with them? And just again, one deep breath. We're going to hold it at the top. So breathe in, hold for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and release. And sigh it out if you want. Yeah. So again, just kind of notice, did anything shift within you when you practice that, this grounding technique of breathing and just spending 60 seconds? Did anything shift? Any thoughts, any emotions, any bodily sensations? And also, if not, no worries, right? We're not here to judge the experience. Again, it's all about practice. So it's just really about being mindful and present with yourself as it's happening. So good job in already doing 2 coping skills within the hour. And here we go.
Again, as Jessica mentioned, thank you all for being here. You've already practiced some self-care tonight by showing up. We'd like to check in with you on some community resources and let you know what else is available. We're really fortunate in Santa Barbara that we have a lot of resources. If you or your child or someone that you know needs help with depression or anxiety or any other mental health issues, we have a list here for you. As we mentioned, we all work for FSA through the school-based counselor program. They have many other programs for the community at FSA. Here is the main line, and they can point you in the right direction. Some things that we thought might be of particular interest to parents: we have family workshops for parenting classes, advocacy. These are being offered via Zoom right now. We also have a free and confidential parent warm line and for support and coaching. We have Veronica offering services in English and Anna offering services in Spanish, and those numbers are also listed here. And counselors at each school, where we have an FSA counselor in the district of Santa Barbara, will be offering coffee chats soon, so those announcements should be coming out from your schools. And as we mentioned, there are FSA therapists available to work with students at all of the secondary schools in Santa Barbara Unified School District. And for those referrals, you can contact your academic counselors or your students' deans. Also, another great resource that we have here in town is the Mental Wellness Center, and you'll see their website is listed. They have great parent groups. They also have virtual support groups for kids. They also have
get all that stuff cleaned up.
They also have mental health first aid trainings, very similar to first aid trainings for physical health. We are now offering mental health. I believe it's a 1 to 2 day free workshop that are being offered as well. Of course, if you or anyone you know is experiencing a mental health emergency, there is a phone number called Access. It's a 24-hour line. You can reach someone all hours. That number is 888-868-1649. And of course, for any emergencies, 911. If you would like more information about any community resources, more information on anything on this list, we do have a much longer and more extensive list available, and Raquel is happy to field those questions and point you in the right directions for these resources. Again, thank you all for being here this evening, for taking some time for yourself and your families, and we're here to support you through this pandemic and always.
So if you haven't already, go ahead and send any questions you might have in the chat to Raquel, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have at this time. And yeah, I mean, if you're welcome to stay, you're welcome to go, but we just want to say thank you so much for being here. And maybe while we're going through the questions, we can show the community resources again, just in case there's anything else you didn't get to take notes of. And here are references from the night, and yeah, go ahead and ask us whatever questions you might have.
And also, you guys might have noticed, I put in the chat just a link for a flyer with additional community resources. It's very thorough. It has resources and information about other agencies too that you guys can access as well.
I also want to add that the spot groups at Mental Wellness Center, they are specifically for parents who support each other in having children who suffer from mental illness. So mental illness often affects the whole family, not just the person who's experiencing it. So this is a great resource if you have a kiddo who is not doing too well or suffers with their mental health, to just kind of connect with other parents about that. And the strengthening family workshops are all free as well. And those, they have several different types. So I just wanted to point that out as well. Do we have any questions, Raquel?
I had some questions sent to me, but it seems like Kara was also getting some questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Did you want to take one, Raquel, or I can address one if there's nothing pressing in yours?
Mine is someone has asked like a question about her particular situation. So it's nothing, you know, for the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is this question I think is probably applying to a lot of people. What the question is, any tips to talk to a student who is afraid of going back to in-person classes? And I would suggest the first step is just talking about it and listening. I think that, and also normalizing that fear. I think that there is a lot of uncertainty about when we're going back, what classes will look like when we do go back. And so, you know, talking to your students about what are they most afraid of, and then addressing those concerns, whether it be, you know, are they afraid of the virus? Are they nervous about seeing their friends again? So maybe having that conversation about what the specific fear is. You know, I as we did in the exercise this evening with the breathing, I think that the breathing exercises, taking some deep breaths, can really be helpful in any situation. It sounds really small, but if I could give one piece of advice to students getting ready to walk back into their classroom for the first time and feeling that anxious feeling, I would really recommend that they take some deep breaths and take it slow. I don't know if any of the other counselors would like to add to that.
Yeah, I think that so much of our fears, a lot of times just getting it out and expressing it to somebody who seems like a safe person, that can really alleviate a lot of that anxiety. So I would encourage someone to give them that safe space, or that safer space to talk about it. And again, just validate their experience. A lot of times I think our inclination is to want to fix, right? So maybe when they express their fear to you, I know for me, a lot of times my instinct might be, oh, well, have you thought about this? Or what if you did this? But really, I would encourage you guys just to listen. And I would also share that there are likely the FSA, the Family Service Agency counselors, and other resources on campus if they want somebody to talk with. And we might also have counseling groups. I'm not sure if we have any started in the schools yet, but we're hoping that we could start some groups, and so maybe there will be opportunities for students to connect with other students who might be going through some similar situations.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think going back to the modeling, I think Devin was talking about that. No, I am myself the parent of a high schooler, And a lot of the times, she does express her own fears and concerns about what the world will look like after this. None of us know. And I think as a parent, you're always in trying to be the one that gives them the answers. And right now, none of us does have any answers as far as what it will look like. So being a place of connection where you could be like, I get it. I feel that way too. I'm concerned. I'm afraid. Let's talk about it. The little sheet that we sent in the chat might be a really good place to start. Like, how can we be proactive about our own self-care and working together with your child on that particular spreadsheet so that you are in connection? Because if you keep that connection, that is the beautiful place to handle anything that may come our way, because none of us know. So I think staying in that place where you're just modeling, being honest and validating. There's no magic pill for the anxiety that this whole situation is bringing to our whole world. So how can we be in the moment, practice the grounding, practice the breathing, and stay in open communication with one another, and really share with your child. Yes, they might be much younger than you, but at the same time, you feel those things as well. And, maybe trying to work together with them and kind of helping them access. So when you've had issues in the past, difficulties, stressors, what are some of the things that were helpful? Because, they have those skills, and it's maybe they just need a reminder. Maybe they just need, again, to practice. So in a way, just being together in that place where you can just realize, this is hard for me too.
I think you three said it really well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other, I could definitely expand, but are there other questions that
Yeah, I'm not getting any more. Did you get any more, Kara, that you want to share?
And I've heard this question come up quite a bit, so I think it's a great one to share with the group about keeping kids away from screens at home during quarantine. And I know that's a really big challenge right now after being at school on Zoom all day and with these social restrictions, still wanting to connect with people. So much of that is happening over the computer, but I do think it is important to spend some time away and to disconnect. And one suggestion I would have for that is getting outside, taking a walk. If you have a family pet, going for a walk as a family, depending on your personal circumstances and your risk level, if you can do a social distancing walk with a friend. Again, I would, check in with what's right for your family based on your health concerns and your social distancing practices. But, we're fortunate in Santa Barbara to have a beach and some mountains and a lot of opportunities to get outside. And there's a lot of benefits to being in nature as well. So I would suggest that as an alternative for screen time.
Great. I think what I would add, or one idea might be to kind of come up with a contract almost with your kiddo and do it collaboratively. So give them a say and really actually listen and say, what do you think is a reasonable amount of hours spent on a screen per day? Like, let's see what you think and let's see what I think, and really negotiate with them and figure it out, right? Like, okay, maybe we keep the phone at nighttime, or maybe, when at dinner or on our walks, we don't have our phones, whatever's going to fit for your family, your teen, or your adolescent. You kind of have to negotiate that together, what's going to work for you. But if you guys can both literally put it on a piece of paper and be like, this is our contract, and have them write it out, give them some power over the situation, and be at least willing to hear them out and hear what they think is reasonable. I think parents can be sometimes surprised at how reasonable sometimes the adolescents and teens can be about, what is an appropriate amount of time on social media or looking at a screen. And then you have that contract, and you have the rules and the regulations, right? Like, this is our agreement, and this is what happens if we don't meet our agreement. And so when you follow through with your agreement, it's not a shock. It's not it's not extremely dysregulating thing. Like, you took my phone, I have no friends, I'm so isolated, it's a pandemic. Like, it's been agreed upon, and there's a limited amount of time too. So it's not indefinite, because It is, right? We're in a pandemic, and for a lot of these kids, it's the only way they can socialize in a time in their life where being social is so, so crucial to their development. So it is that push and pull, but if you guys are willing to kind of negotiate and find what's right and then follow through with that, that can be a helpful tip.
Yeah, great points.
Any other questions? I do want to share that we're hopeful that we'll be able to have more of these webinars in the future, perhaps on a monthly basis. So just stay tuned, everybody, to Parent Square or the other ways that you might get news from your schools. Yeah, hopefully we will be able to see you in the future. We'll hang around for another few minutes to see if there's any more questions. But again, we're so grateful that you all showed up tonight. Thanks for learning with us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Do you guys have any feedback for us, or any topics that you would like to see in the future? We would absolutely love your feedback and questions that we didn't answer, or just any topics that you would like to learn about. We're happy to be adaptable and want to be adaptable to your needs.
I actually got a question here, so maybe we could just touch upon this particular question, because it might be something other parents are dealing with right now. So someone shared that their teenager's at home by himself in the afternoon while the parent is at work. So what are some activities that could be suggested to keep him busy while, you know, the person is at home and the child is at, the person's at work and the child is at home. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Like, what are some of the things? I mean, that's kind of hard to manage because you're not there with the particular student, but what are some of your guys' thoughts about that? Like, any ideas come up for you?
Again, I think my mind jumped to, what do they value in their life? What do they enjoy doing? What's going to motivate them? So maybe it starts with a conversation of, well, if you could be doing anything, what would it be? And kind of navigating right under maybe different circumstances of the pandemic. What can that look like? It's not all or nothing. Maybe if we can't be doing that one thing that we love doing, like what's one thing that's closer to that instead of not doing anything at all, right? And again, that's kind of abstract as opposed to like concrete, this is what you can do. But I mean, exploring hobbies, it's really just up to what they want. And the more kind of decision-making and power you can give to your kiddo in this kind of conversation and what they do, the more buy-in there is in follow-through. So, I'm kind of putting myself back into being a teen, and if this was going on if I was a teen and I lived with my parents, I think that I would feel totally, completely no control over anything in my life, right? Absolutely none. So if there's something that can give them kind of the independence in their own little skill or their own hobby, or whether it's cooking or learning to sew or skateboarding, whatever it is, just something that they can excel at, that they can like find that individuality in while you support that, can be helpful. I hope that somewhat answered your question, but
I think that's a great answer. And again, as a parent, I think always bringing your, reminding yourself that, yes, this is lasting a long time, but at the same time, nothing ever lasts forever. So again, for my own personal view around the situation, one of the things that we had seen before is like kids are always on screens, phones, computers. So it is a hope that the fact that they have had to be on screens and so much, during the pandemic, that can instill in them the desire to be more social, to be more active, when we actually are able to be at that point where, you know, things ease up a little bit and we're not in quarantine. So you don't know how this can actually shift their behavior. And that's a goal that we can have, and hopefully that will happen. I think that would be beautiful. You know, we as a society, we're going toward just everything being digital. And, you know, these kids are bright, they are smart, they have human needs just like adults do, to connect. So again, easing your own anxiety around, you know, feeling like you're being inadequate, like you should be doing more to keep them off screens. Just realizing that, you know, if you look at yourself right now, our jobs, a lot of people are actually doing things through Zoom all the time, even the adults. So again, this is where we're at. So bringing you back to the present moment where you're like, you know what, this is what's going on right now, and I'm going to do my best with what's happening. So that's, you know, you don't have specific answers about it, but that could be helpful to just do that check-in with yourself too.
I have one other suggestion also. I am a huge reader. I love to read. So I know that not everyone does, but our public library is amazing. And they're doing, I think they're doing some extra programs right now, and they have book clubs, and, you know, they have really great resources for kids who aren't as excited about reading, when they'll put together a custom book list. And so just as another idea for something that doesn't involve screens. And I was just reading an article about how that can also help with a sense of loneliness and isolation, because if you get into a really good book, you develop a bond with a character. And so a lot of people are kind of refinding a love of reading right now, and bonding with a book as a way to deal with some of those feelings of loneliness and isolation as well. So just wanted to throw in a pitch for the public library too.
That's awesome. And even the school libraries, they're open, and they have pickup times depending on the school. You can check in with, they're there and they're happy to help.
And one of the parents just shared also that having kids make dinner for their families is another great activity too. So wanted to toss that out there also.
That's really awesome. And it will help the parent too.
Yeah.
I love that. Cool. Well, we want to be respectful of the time. It's 8:03, so I think that we can go ahead and wrap it up here. However, please do send us some feedback, or just a topic that you want to learn about in the future. Send us a little chat, and want to highlight that Raquel's email address is here down below. So if you have more questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. She and the rest of us and the team would be happy to answer any other questions or provide more resources. So thank you so much again for being here, and we hope you have a great night.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.